Hey everybody, Tom Barnes, stories from the 78, and I got a fantastic story about a radio legend in Chicago. My friend Pam here is going to help tell me this story, but it's about the one and only Dick Biondi. And how are you, Pam?
I'm doing great, Tom. Thanks for having me on. This is really going to be fun.
Yeah, for sure. I absolutely love to talk about anybody about Chicago, radio history in Chicago. And Dick Biondi is the top of the mountain when it comes to all of that stuff. I mean, he was a legend in his own right, and unfortunately, he passed this year. But you were working with Dick, or you got permission to tell his story. And you've been working on this movie that you're putting together for a few years now. And I wanted to talk to you about it because I think it's a well overdue thing. I can't believe nobody else has done something prior to what you started.
I can't believe it either. And that's why I took it on, I think, because I was waiting for somebody to do it. And I was actually retired. And I called Dick one day at the station. He was on WLS-FM. I said,
Hmm.
"Hey, Dick, has anybody ever asked about doing a documentary about you?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm talking to some people right now." And I said, "Oh, good." And a year later, I asked him about it again. And he said, "Oh, no, nothing's going on." So I was like, the wheels start turning. Because I had an independent, a small production company, a video production company myself towards the last 10 years of my career. And I was into doing personal memoirs, and I love to hear people's stories. And I always wanted to tell Dick's story, but I just didn't think I was the person to do that. I was waiting for
Uh,
somebody like Ken Burns or somebody. So anyway, I called him and I said, "Dick, I really would love to tell your story from the fans' perspective." And I think that's what got him because, not long ago, I did a screening up at the Acorn Theater in Three Oaks, Michigan, and John Landecker was there. And because he lives in that area, and he's been
oh,
a long time friend of this project. I used he used to
I used
have
to work with John too.
Did you? That's very cool.
I was his producer at
Oh,
WLS-FM 94.7, and I helped out Dick when he came over there when it flipped formats to the oldies format that it was.
that's awesome.
Yeah,
That must have been a blast.
John had stories. I mean, so did Dick. I mean, obviously, Dick, this biggest story, playing the first Beatles record in America, and you know, John with his what was he the boogie check.
Boogie check.
Yeah, and all the stories he had about bands coming through and coming to the old radio station that was WLS-AM, and all the stories about bands coming through like the Rolling Stones, and
Yeah.
just incredible stories that I wouldn't be comfortable sharing out loud just because they're John's stories to tell if he wanted people to hear them.
Well, he is such a sweetheart. And he had me on his show when he was out in Michigan City all the time. I used to live out in LaPorte. I retired to LaPorte, Indiana. My sister lives over there. And
Mm-hmm.
I was just living in a little cottage by the lake when all this happened. I thought I was done with my career. And but there was always this one thing that I always had in the back of my mind. I would love to tell Dick's story because I met Dick when this is the big part. Okay, I met Dick when I was 13 years old. I was living in the suburbs of Chicago, 20 miles west in Villa Park, and I was a big fan. When I heard Dick on the radio, I was like hooked. And
Yeah,
so a year later, I happened to hear on the radio, Dick Biondi's over at the local shopping center. I'm begging my dad, "Dad, you got to take us over there. So he did. He drove my sister and her best friend and my girlfriend Joan and well, she was my best friend, over there. And we got there, and there was Dick coming in by helicopter because that's what he did. He was so popular, and
came in by helicopter.
came by helicopter.
Wow.
Yeah, and the kids were going crazy, and of course we were too. This is all in my movie, by the way. And but the thing that really got me was afterwards. Dick took time with all the kids. Anybody that wanted to come up and talk to Dick, he took time and talked to them. Not only did he talk to them, he looked you in the eye and he asked about you. And he made you feel very special and important. And back in those days, most adults didn't think teenagers were very special. They were like, ugh, you know,
Yeah.
especially rock and roll, you know. So yeah, I thought this guy's really special. So I started a fan club for him, and
Did
that's
you
how I got
really?
to know him. Yeah, that's how I got to know him.
Before we get further, what's the name of the movie that you're working, the documentary you're
It's
working on?
called The Voice That Rocked America, the Dick Biondi story. And the reason why it's called that is because most people, a lot of people, don't know that Dick Biondi worked in every major city in the country back in his day, and he's
Mhm.
known all across the country. And even when he first came to WLS, which is where I met him in 1960 to 63, he was a WLS-AM radio when
Mhm.
it turned top 40, and he was heard all across the country because they were on this clear channel, and it just broadcast at night.
Right, AM radio went forever.
Yes, and he was heard all around the country. So that's why I called it that. And yeah, I 9 years I've been working on this project, and it's just been a sheer delight to meet so many people that love this guy. You know,
Yeah, I mean, you talk to anybody from Chicago who grew up here, even when I growing up, when he was on 104.3 WJMK, he was
yeah,
on there. And I grew up, because my dad had that on and my
the
parents had
oldies.
it on in the house, the oldie station. So
Yeah,
I heard Dick Biondi as a kid, as my dad heard Dick Biondi as a kid when he was at WLS and the other stations.
isn't that special?
Yeah, I mean that doesn't happen anymore with radio
No.
DJs or even like actors, and like it just things aren't like the way they were. And I guess that's part of the brilliance of Dick Biondi. He lasted for how many years in broadcasting total?
He was on the air. How can I how can I forget? I have a brain freeze. Hold on.
Well over 50.
Yeah. My brain just went dead, and I know that like I know the back of my hand.
I'll come to you.
God.
But either way, he was on for generations of people to hear him. And then, to meet Dick, I met him and he was a wonderful human being, such a gracious person to work with. And I only worked with him for a short amount of time, but he was just great. And he would talk to you, like you said, talk to you like he knew you, really ask questions, listen to you. And I think that's what separates the greats and from the not so greats, like people who just are more worried about their career than being a human being. And I felt
Exactly.
like Dick was a human being first, then career oriented, but such
Absolutely.
fun. And it's funny the way that you tell the story about how you asked Dick. I mean, you literally called up and asked him one day, "Hey, is anybody doing a documentary? And if not, I want to do it."
Hmm. I was scared. I'll be honest with you. I never did a documentary before, and I didn't know if I could do it justice. I knew Dick's story. I knew how big he was, and I thought, and I also knew I would have to go out and talk to all these famous people. And I had never done that before. And I was kind of chicken, I'll be honest. But
Who was some
I
of the
did
people you
it.
had to talk to that made you so nervous?
Frankie Valli,
Oh,
Brian
yeah.
Wilson. I got to put a lapel mic on Brian Wilson. I mean, that's my big wow, you know. That was
Yeah.
so exciting. Same thing with Frankie Valli. I mean, I we interviewed him over at Ravinia. We interviewed Brian out at, and Al Jardine also at the Four Winds Casino in New Buffalo. I kind of just went wherever I tried to, when I found out somebody famous was coming that was part of Dick's story, Dick gave me a list of people to interview. So I
Wow.
tried to fulfill that as much as I could. I didn't quite get everybody, but
Right, and you mentioned that Dick gave you the list because Dick authorized this documentary to be made. This
yes, he
was
did.
and you did this well before his death. He led a long and illustrious life, doing what he loved for all of his life. But just hearing the stories about how back then radio DJs would break bands, meaning break them into the market, show the world these bands. He did that for the
Absolutely.
Beatles. He did it for the Buckinghams, the Chicago band or the Crying
Yes.
Shames, and all these other
Yes.
bands that you mentioned. Brian Wilson, the Beach Boys, like the Beach Boys. So
He
it's
wrote their first ballad, Surfer Girl. That's why I had them in the film. when he
That's
was out
incredible,
in LA after he got fired from WLS on May
which is
2nd,
crazy.
1963, 3 years to the day after he
Uh,
was hired there, which is amazing. He got fired and went out to KRLA in Los Angeles, and he worked out there, and that's when he introduced the Beach Boys ballad. So, yeah,
well, they
he's
always
a
say you're not really in the. I forgot how the story goes, but basically you haven't been in broadcasting unless you've been fired a couple times.
fired, yes. And Dick really shined at that. 25 times he shined.
Well, he had a way of wanting to do things and he knew the way to do them. And you know what? Let's be honest, station management for radio stations back then didn't always do what was best for the music or the people that
For
made
the
the music.
listener.
Yeah, they were more worried about other things. But
And
you've been
that's
working.
yeah, that's the thing, Dick. He always lived for his listeners. That was, and that's why I started to tell a story that John Landecker came to the Acorn Theater and came up on stage and was telling the story about how he and Bob Surratt have been for years trying to get Dick to tell his story to somebody, write a book or something. And Dick would go, nah, nobody wants to hear about me and Elvis. And John would look at him like, you know. But he said, so how did he say yes to you? I said, well, I think it was because I told him I wanted to do it from the fans' perspective. And then he goes, oh, okay, now I get it. So I think that was the trick, you know,
Yeah.
because he's such a humble guy, as you probably know. He doesn't really, like, if you ever see Dick interviewing somebody famous and they give him a compliment, he'll turn it right back to them. He doesn't want the light on him. He wants the light on somebody else. It
Absolutely.
really, for somebody that's been in the spotlight all of his life, it's hard to believe that he's very humble.
Right. And a true professional, a broadcasting professional, he really is. And
Totally.
uh, yeah, I loved my time working with him, and I imagine just doing this documentary with him up until this year, was probably pretty. It was a fantastic way to see, his career, his arc of his career, and also recreating his career. So much so that you did something here in my neighborhood at Superdog. Why don't you tell me that story?
Oh, wow. Well, we were looking for a place to do some reenactments of teenagers driving their cars and hanging out at the drive-in, listening to Dick Biondi on the radio back in the 60s and 70s. So a friend of mine said, oh, I know the owner of the Superdog. So we went over and talked to him, and he gave us permission to use the Superdog drive-in overnight, and he left all the neon lights on for us. We all ordered the food before I took everybody's order. We all had hot dogs and stuff before, and then we set out. All the classic cars came from the Lamont Classic Car Club. They offered to caravan out there, and we had it set up for the Friday night, and there was
Hmm.
rain. And I don't know if you know about classic car owners, they will not even take their car out if there's a drop of rain, because it gets under the carriage of the car, and they will not do it. So
Hmm.
we had to cancel everything on the Friday and reschedule the next day. And I was like, how is this going to happen? All these kids are coming in from all over dressed up. I said, dress like you're coming up to do American Graffiti. And you should have seen these kids. It was fantastic. But they all came, and we managed to pull it off, and it was fantastic. So
Oh, that's
that's
such
how
a fun
long we
story. I mean, you had probably the American Graffiti greaser look, right?
Yeah.
Which is the irony of that story is Super Dog in my neighborhood, wonderful place. Just there last night after a concert, but just down the street from Super Dog is Taft High School. And for some historians in Chicago, Taft High School is the high school that the movie or the play, I should say, Grease was modeled after,
Is
because
that
the
right?
yeah, the playwright who wrote Grease wrote it about Taft High School and his experience
Oh
at
my
Taft High
God.
School. So
I
there you
didn't
go.
know that.
In
That's
Norwood Park,
amazing.
Chicago neighborhood. Yeah, all within the same spot. So that's a whole other story. But it's very funny
Yes.
that, or not funny, but serendipitous that that you chose Super Dog, or Super Dog was available, because it is like stepping back in time, and it all
Right.
like brings it all together with this film that you're producing and putting out there, and you're almost there to distribute it out on streaming and movie theaters and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So, what? Tell me
It's
the last chapter of this, so where people can see it.
okay. Well, before we leave Superdog, I want to mention if you go on our website, dickbeyondifilm.com, there's a trailer on there, and it's 2 minutes. You can watch it, and the Superdog, you'll see the Superdog sign in that trailer.
Ah, fantastic.
And some of the scenes that are reenacted. It's fun. But yeah, we are now finally at a point after 9+ years of doing this, because it's an independent film, and I kind of done this myself on a shoestring and had to learn as I go along, you know. And
Sure.
luckily, I've met so many great people that have jumped on board and helped. I have a great team of people that are working with me, you know, volunteers. Everybody's doing this for nothing. We don't get paid. Nobody gets paid. It's a labor of love, as I said. So we are now going to have another screening coming up at the Bolingbrook Golf Club on September 7th. It's doors open at 6 o'clock. It's right on our website if anybody's interested in coming to see the movie. And seats, I think, are $25. You get a free drink with it, one drink, and snacks included. And guess who's going to be playing there, opening up for us? The Crying Shames.
Ah.
Do a 20-minute set. And Jim Peterick is bringing his guitar. He's going to
Oh.
do 10 minutes, 2 songs I think he's going to do.
Ides of March frontman.
These guys are all in the movie. The Buckinghams, all those guys. Crying Shames, Jimmy Sands of the Shadows of Night.
Carl Giammarese from Buckingham.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All those guys are in the movie because I love Dick, you know. So yeah, we're gonna have this big. It's a fundraiser, trying to get the money to finish all the licensing, which is kind of expensive. You know, probably the most expensive part of it all, I would think. But we're
Yeah, I mean,
still working down that.
and you
So
had a
yeah,
prop that
so
you
come
wanted
on
to.
out.
Yeah, for sure. People will come out, and you had something you wanted to show me. You had I think it was a cover, an album
Oh,
cover.
this is just for fun. My
Well,
claim to fame. When I was a kid, I've never been good at picking out clothes for people. You know, I can't hardly pick clothes for myself, right? But I saw this sweater in the local store, and I said, you know, that sweater looks like Dick Biondi. And I brought my sister and I chipped in, and my best friend Joan, we chipped in on it, and we brought it and showed it to my mother, and she's rolling her eyes. She's like, "Oh my God, he's never gonna wear that." Well, guess what, Mom? Look, see that's sweater. That's the sweater we bought him right there on the
no
cover of his
kidding.
teenage album. Yes, is that crazy?
That's
So yeah,
fantastic. I mean, so it's like written in the stars that you're going to do this for Dick.
I guess so. You know, I fought it for a while. I kept like, oh, I don't
And
know.
this
I
is a
was like,
retirement project.
yes. And I'm like,
Your generation does not know how to not work. I tell you, my mom and dad are the same way.
right, we got it. We got that work ethic, and we can't get it out of our system.
No, it's a great thing. It
Yeah,
is. Yeah,
yeah.
you keep our country on the straight and narrow. I really think that's true.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah. And for
Well,
folks,
if you want to come out and be my guest, you'll be my guest if you'd like to come out.
oh, that's lovely. Thank you so much.
You're
It sounds
welcome.
like a wonderful. I can't wait to see the film. And for people who want to learn more about the film, you mentioned the website before, but mention it again just for any kind of,
Sure.
information people might have that, or that you might have on there that they can learn from that.
Okay, it's dickbeyondifilm.com. We're on Facebook. We're all over the place. We got YouTube videos, all galore, all kinds of stuff. So yeah, I hope everybody will come on out.
Yeah. Well,
September
Pam,
7th.
thank you for chatting with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tom. Pleasure.
Okay, Pam, that's all I needed from the interview part. So thank you very much for taking time. And if you have any photos that I can use during this interview,
You know what?
or links to move.
Go on my website and go to the press kit. There's a bunch of photos on there you can download.
Okay, dickbeyondamovie.com.
Dickbeyondifilm.com.
Film. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
All right, I
I'll
will
send
do
you
that.
the link. I'll send it
Okay.
to you in an email. Are you going to be able to add the link and everything? And
Yeah, for sure.
okay, good. All right, cool. Well, we're not friends on Facebook, are we? Or are we?
I think so. I see your message. I have it up on my screen here. Let me make sure here. Yeah, we're friends.
Oh, good, good. Okay.
Real Stories Productions LLC.
Oh, well, you know what? That's
That's what it says.
another
Well,
site.
that's what it says on your Facebook
Oh, okay.
page.
Well, I'm going to have to friend you on my other personal page and also on the Dick Biondi film page.
Okay, I'll take it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All
Can't
right,
wait
have
to
yourself.
see it. Let me know when it's going to run and I can share it on my.
I will for sure. And
Yeah,
thank you for what you're doing. I think it's great
thank you.
that somebody who has this, this relationship with Dick will be able to put something out that he was happy to give his blessing to. I think it's great. I think we need to, save these stories for the generation that won't even know what radio is, but they need to know how important radio was back then. Because what radio was in the 60s and 70s is what Instagram and TikTok are today.
Yes, absolutely. You got it.
All right. Well, Pam, thank you very much. Have yourself a great weekend.
You too.
All right. We'll see you later. Bye.
Okay.